What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.
All right, we're going. We're good to go.
All right, welcome everybody. So small crew tonight. It's just the three of us, Dave, Dan, and myself. Some other folks are doing some other things, being as it's summer or had to work or whatever's going on. But they'll hopefully pick back up with us next time around. But kind of shy on some news this week. It's been kind of a quiet couple of weeks for news. But we will start off with, let me get this shared here. No, not entire screen. Let's see, we'll do this. So the Senate committee has confirmed Brian Bedford as the FAA administrator. That's going to now move on to a full Senate vote, in which maybe we'll get a new administrator for the FAA. So the Committee on Science, Commerce, Science, and Transportation voted this morning to advance Brian Bedford's nomination as administrator of the FAA with a narrow margin of 15 ayes and to 13 noes. Bedford, the longtime CEO of Republic Airways, now moves one step closer to leading the agency at a time of heightened scrutiny and urgent calls for reform. Bedford's nomination has been widely praised by aviation industry leaders and several lawmakers for his extensive hands-on experience. Senator Ted Cruz, chairing the committee, stated, "Brian Bedford is ready to be FAA administrator. He's just as informed about aviation safety as other nominees, if not more. This committee understands how important it is to have an FAA administrator with actual experience." Cruz further emphasized Bedford's readiness to modernize the FAA and address current challenges, noting Brian Bedford will modernize the FAA to meet today's challenges. So just a throwback to when President Biden first took office, and he advanced, I don't even remember his name, and I remember the nominee that they were interviewing, Ted Cruz, was asking him about UAS, and Part 107, I think, came up, and there was just like blank stares happening there. So, good on Ted Cruz for vetting that, I guess, at that point. So we'll see what happens here. So concerns and opposition. Despite strong backing from many in the aviation sector, Bedford's nomination faced significant opposition within the committee. Ranking member Senator Maria Cantwell voiced her concerns, referencing high-profile safety incidents, including the Alaska Flight 1282 and the tragic crash of Flight 5342. Cantwell remarked the agency must tackle safety gaps and prevent future accidents. The Alaska Flight 1282 incident is a serious reminder of the FAA's need for a proactive, not reactive oversight approach. The FAA needs an administrator who will be a strong cop on the beat. I'm not going to support Mr. Bedford's nomination. Says several senators opposing the nomination cited worries about Bedford's close ties to the airline industry and questioned his willingness to prioritize public safety over industry interests. According to reporting from Travel Pulse, Critics pointed to Bedford's record at Republic Airways, expressing concern that his leadership style may favor deregulation and cost cutting at the expense of rigorous oversight. Some senators also raised issues regarding his stance on pilot training standards and his approach to addressing the ongoing air traffic controller shortage. So, if selected, Bedford will inherit an agency facing a series of urgent challenges, modernizing the air traffic control. The FAA is under pressure to overhaul outdated systems and implement new technologies to handle increasing airspace demand. Safety oversight. Recent accidents have underscored the need for more proactive safety measures and robust oversight. Staffing shortages. The agency must address a critical shortage of air traffic controllers and the loss of experienced personnel. And integration of new technologies. Bedford will be tasked with integrating drones, advanced air mobility, and potentially supersonic flight into the national airspace system following recent executive orders. So we'll see what happens. I don't know a whole ton about this gentleman, but I don't know. Dave, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm hoping that he's that the view that because he comes from the airline industry, that he'll be pro-industry and down on regulation and lax on safety. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
Certainly, the back and forth or revolving door between the FAA and the industry is ever present. My observation is it does not appear to be damaging because the folks that we've worked with in crewed or manned aviation take safety so very seriously.
Mhm.
And so, maybe that's a real positive. Certainly, if you have not come from aviation, that would be bad.
Yeah, 100%.
To me, the one huge surprise was when Malali came from Ford, I think it was, and then took over Boeing. And I'm like, oh, how is this hard? So it was the other way around. But how is this going to work? But there's someone who also was able to quiet the doubters. So let's hope this works. It's also having someone with aviation background is it's great. And to Senator Cruz's point that this is a confirmee with experience in the industry, that's an unusual phenomenon across the Senate confirmation confirmees, both the secretaries as well as assistant secretaries as well as the administrators. There's there's huge number of them have no experience in what they're doing.
Mhm.
Happily, the likes of Treasury have Scott Bessent. Other than that, there are lots that don't. So I'm heartened that at least we have an airline executive with a good knowledge of the regulator, of the regulations, of the business, the industry, and the critical nature of the safety
Mhm.
aspect.
It's
And
probably a good start that he even knows some of the acronyms, I would assume.
So true.
Oh, goodness.
So true. He'll hopefully speak the language. Now we just have to teach him the drone idiom.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure my hope is that he's at least knowledgeable to a certain extent. It does seem to be that a lot of people who make the regulations, whether it's for drones, for airplanes, for whatever, right? They tend to lack experience in those particular segments. And you know, I do believe in surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable, right? But at the same time, like I feel like leaders should understand it to a certain extent and be enveloped in the subject matter as a whole, right?
Yeah.
And bring
Yeah.
subject matter experts to bear, right? But
Yeah, as we're waiting for the imminent release of the Beyond Visual Line of Sight notice for public rulemaking, we know that the rulemaking groups in the FAA are incredibly well versed in manned aviation, to a much lesser extent to unmanned aircraft.
Mhm.
And so I agree that the it's important that if you're making a rule, you understand the industry, the technology, the limitations, and what's common sense. And certainly these folks have that for manned aviation.
Yeah.
So Land Squid in the YouTube comments is asking about supersonic flight. You had read that in the article briefly. Do you have any more information on what they mean by saying supersonic flight?
That was actually in one of Trump's executive orders that we covered on the last one.
Right.
Let me see if I can pull that up over here.
And there was also a Federal Register. I believe the FAA is being tasked with approving a new supersonic transport that has come out across 2024. And I think Josh is absolutely right that was reiterated in one of the two June 6 executive orders.
Is it true? Was it the Concorde? Was that the last supersonic, like, passenger flight commercial that was retired many years ago?
Yes. And of course, military aircraft are not what we're talking about here.
Not included.
Yeah. So it's I pulled it up here. Executive Order 14304. That's a lot of executive orders that have happened. Just saying. So regulatory reform for supersonic flight. The administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration shall take the necessary steps, including through rulemaking, to repeal the prohibition on overland supersonic flight within 180 days of this order, and establish an interim noise-based certification standard, making any modifications to 14 CFR 91.818 as necessary, as consistent with applicable law. The administrator of the FAA shall also take immediate steps to repeal 819 and 821, which will remove additional regulatory barriers that hinder the advancement of supersonic aviation technology in the United States. So
as an aside, noise-based regulations in aircraft are the number one complaint of civilians near airports. And for those of us who watched the Concorde SST take off and land, they used jet engines, not turbofans. It was insanely loud. It was much louder than watching an F-16 or an F-15 that are also powered by jet engines, not van jets. And so noise regs are absolutely front of mind in beyond visual line of sight as well, because certainly people don't like the sound of drones. And so noise pollution is something that we need to be very thoughtful about as we're thinking about where we fly and possibly getting people's attention we don't want to make or create.
Yeah. So, and speaking from experience, so out here in Phoenix, we've got Luke Air Force Base, and one of the premier training facilities for used to be the F-16s. We used to go out and watch them take off all the time. By far my favorite jet. But now F-35s, and if you're looking to buy a home in the vicinity of, you have to basically sign a thing that says, you understand that, there's going to be overflights from jets and all kinds of stuff. So, and they are loud. I remember driving to work one day, many, many years ago. I drove right by Luke Air Force Base and right by the runways, and had the radio up, was driving, and all of a sudden my window in my truck was just vibrating intensely, and I thought it was going to shatter. I looked over, and there's an F-16 just like full burner ready to take off. I'm just like, oh geez. But yeah, definitely loud, but we'll see what happens with supersonic flight. I mean, I think a lot of people were awed by the Concorde. A lot of people couldn't experience that. I think tickets to that on that flight were incredibly expensive, and there were only 3 or 5 in service, like ever. I can't remember. It wasn't very many. Yeah. So,
yeah,
but
the price of the tickets were a multiple of first class.
Yeah.
So
I remember seeing stuff. So segueing, Dave, you gave me the perfect segue. So, one of Da Vinci's early designs could make modern drones stealthier. So, a
Well,
kind of
compared to a supersonic flight, drones are pretty stealthy already.
yeah, they are. Right. So, a kind of helicopter design first envisioned by the Renaissance era Italian polymath Leonardo da Vinci could help to develop quieter and stealthier modern drones, according to a new study. Drones produce a characteristic high pitched buzz as their propellers slice through the air. As these remotely operated vehicles become more widely used for package delivery, photography, emergency response, and warfare, the noise pollution they produce is only set to increase. A new study from Johns Hopkins University suggests that a device invented by Leonardo da Vinci more than 500 years ago could hold the key to coming up with quieter drone technologies. Perhaps the most famous of his paintings, such as the Mona Lisa and Last Supper, Leonardo was also an engineer and architect, conceptualizing plausible flying machines century before the age of flight, including a prototype helicopter. The Leonardo aerial screw, conceived in the 15th century, is one of the earliest known designs for a lift-generating rotor. Despite this, its aerodynamic and aeroacoustic performance has received limited scientific attention, according to mechanical engineering professor Rajat Mittal, author of the new study. In the yet-to-be peer-reviewed research, Dr. Mittal and his team simulated the aerodynamic forces and sound emissions of a modernized Leonardo aerial screw design. Da Vinci's visionary aerial screw, a sort of precursor to the modern helicopter, inspired our investigation. Let's see. The buzzing noises produced by modern drones are due to air vortices around the tip of the propellers, which whoosh and intersect with their flat-angled blades. Researchers theorized propellers made similar to Leonardo's design with a screw-like shape, and a single blade can spread those air vortices around and mute the sound. Scientists ran computer simulations evaluating the lift, mechanical power, and acoustic emissions from such a design under different airflow conditions. They compared the results with those from typical two-bladed rotors that produce similar lift. Scientists found that the modernized Leonardo design produced less sound intensity for the same lift. The aerial screw demonstrates significantly lower mechanical power consumption and acoustic intensity per unit lift. So basically, more efficient is what they're stating, they're claiming, and quieter. They found that the spiral geometry of the Leonardo aerial screw suppresses interaction between the rotor blade and air vortex, and therefore the noise from it. The continuous single blade design from the aerial screw mitigates blade vortex interaction noise, a key contributor to rotor aeroacoustics. I didn't even know that had a name. These findings, according to researchers, highlight the potential benefits of unconventional rotor designs for noise-sensitive applications. So, Dan, Dave, would you fly an aerial screw?
I'd like to see it fly itself first.
This makes my head explode. I mean, I'm amazed that I mean, it looks like a propeller that goes through a fluid, which would which are non-compressible, and air is highly compressible, and hence the whole school of aerodynamics of what propellers are doing and to gain lift. So this is just I recognize the sketches from Leonardo. It's like, oh yeah, that's cute. I would never ever have guessed that it has a lower power consumption for equivalent levels of lift.
Lift, yeah.
So I thought this was going to they would say, yeah, it's very quiet, but it also doesn't work. That's what I expected.
I just had this thought in my head as I was reading this article earlier. And, if you can imagine, it's almost like that steampunk style, right? It's, you see, like, think about like World War II propeller driven airplanes, right? P-52 Mustang with a air screw on the front instead of a propeller, right?
So for the P-51 for the
or P-51, yeah,
for the aficionados in our audience.
Yeah, 100%. But just like it blows my mind. I'd be interested to see it. Gonna have to make those ducks a little bigger, I think. Like,
yeah, but this is something that we could do with a 3D printer.
100%. I mean, if there's less air vortices to deal with, it might be an effective 3D printed propeller, right?
If we could create toroidal shapes that we could create a aerial screw. Plus,
Yeah.
just the attraction to be able to say aerial screw multiple times is that would be motivation enough to make one.
That's hilarious. And those oh man, I can't even say the word toroidal propellers. They kind of died out pretty quick. Like I feel like, I think there's still some people making them, but it's very few and far between. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody fly them, but definitely interesting. All right. Moving along here. Louisiana pioneers drone defense law empowering local police to neutralize threats. So I'm curious how this is going to work with federal law, but in a groundbreaking move, Louisiana has become the first U.S. state to authorize local law enforcement to intercept and disable drones posing credible threats to public safety. Signed into law on June 18th, 2025 by Governor Jeff Landry, the We Will Act equips trained officers with the authority to use kinetic and non-kinetic technologies to neutralize rogue unmanned aerial systems at near high-risk areas like schools, public events, and critical infrastructure. The new law marks a significant shift as drone interception has historically been a federal responsibility, limited to agencies like the DoD, Department of Homeland Security, under statutes like 6 U.S.C. Section 124. Louisiana's legislation empowers state and local police to act decisively, addressing growing concerns about unauthorized drone activity. This law puts Louisiana on the front lines of drone defense, said Governor Landry. We are taking bold steps now to protect our people and our skies before tragedy strikes. The bill responds to incidents like the 2024 drone sightings across the northeastern United States, where over 5,000 reports raised alarms but were largely unsubstantiated, as noted in February 2025 lawfare analysis.
Why does that come up in every one of these drone shoot out of the sky bills?
Well, it's like Gatwick, right? Like, how long did we have to deal with Gatwick being in the news cycle? Holy Jesus. Let's see. These events underscored gaps in state and local authority to address drone threats, which Louisiana's law now seeks to fill. The law allows officers to deploy technologies such as signal jammers, directed energy systems, and physical nets to disable drones. So, laser beams, apparently. Let's see. These tools target UAS operating unlawfully within approximately 400 feet of sensitive sites, aligning with federal restrictions on drone flights near military bases. Officers must undergo specialized training to ensure precise, safe interventions, minimizing risks like collateral damage from kinetic methods, a concern raised in the lawfare report. Penalties for illegal drone operations are steep, including fines up to $5,000. That's not fair. That's not really steep. 1 year in jail. I'd call that steep. And mandatory drone forfeiture. Okay, well, we take your drone now.
If your drone was taken out of the sky, I don't know.
It's probably
how much is it worth to you now?
All right. Maybe they come take all your drones. This framework aims to deter violations while equipping law enforcement with clear protocols. The law's focus on credible threats ensures targeted enforcement, avoiding interference with the estimated 8,000 drones flown lawfully daily in the United States, as cited by the Pentagon. 8,000. I find that number incredibly low.
Way low. Yep.
So
the level of stupidity of this bill reaches new levels. So first, it violates federal preemption. And so the federal government has the authority to regulate the skies and retains the authority to perform counter UAS activities. Then when you start to think of the collateral damage that could result from taking drones out of the sky, drones that are handling blood shipments, organ transplant shipments, local law enforcement doing surveillance, apprehending perpetrators, or the danger of falling drones when you signal jam. Are they going to use appropriate technology that only jams an individual signal, or are they going to bring down drones in a specific area? So this is dumb on so many levels. But hey, it is Louisiana, so right on brand.
Seems like
If
this
you're from Louisiana, Dave has no hate for you.
this topic is spreading from state to state and all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We've
Well, was
got,
it Ohio that
Flor-
wanted to shoot drones down, like legit, like give citizens the right to
and
shoot drones down?
Florida using the language of using reasonable force, I think was the expression that they used, and Florida did not distinguish whether it would be kinetic or signal.
Yeah.
So they just have it reasonable, whatever that's supposed to mean.
And
Yeah.
it is the YouTube comment says the first time they shoot down an Amazon or Google drone, it'll get shut down. Or the first time some senator doesn't get their Amazon package delivered because it was shot out of the sky, like suddenly we need regulations that stop people from shooting drones out of the sky.
Yep.
Right. That's crazy.
Yep.
I mean, the biggest fear I have is a drone coming down, hurting somebody, or coming down and a lipo getting punctured and starting a fire. Like that. Those are the two things I envision just causing massive amounts of property damage, personal damage. Like, I don't know.
Or the people who are shooting at it and don't realize that the bullets come down somewhere, or whatever they're shooting at
Right.
it has to come down. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
of
don't
course,
know.
the bill
Yeah.
said they would be properly trained. So, then they obviously wouldn't make any mistakes.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go back and cite the people that are over in Ukraine and Russia that are trying to shoot down drones over there. Like, it ain't easy. Let me just tell you that. Or if you want more evidence, go see one of the OG Rotor Riot videos where they did this.
I still like
And
the
those were-
idea of just there would be a marketplace for highly trained FPV drone pilots to like take other drones out of the sky with their drones, or
Mhm.
grab them in nets or something. Like that would be a very interesting job to fly around and try to chase other drones out of the sky. Like
Mhm.
fighter pilots, but with no pilots in the air, right?
Yeah, you can have little prop symbols on the side of your drone.
You still
Oh,
have
that
the
would be
issue of things falling
hilarious.
out of the sky and dangers, but it sounds more fun.
Yes.
And it would create jobs.
There you go.
All right. Let's see. Let me scroll back up. So, new DJI report highlights major drone privacy upgrades. DJI, the world's leading drone maker, has officially released the 2025 edition of its drone security white paper, a comprehensive update that consolidates years of progress in bolstering the safety, privacy, and integrity of its drone ecosystem. The white paper, first published in 2020, has evolved into a crucial reference for the enterprise users and public agencies seeking clarity on how DJI ensures data protection and operational reliability in its drones. This year's update reflects DJI's ongoing commitment to responsible innovation amid heightened scrutiny, especially in the United States, where security concerns about foreign-made drones remain a hot-button issue. The 2025 edition includes enhanced technical protections, privacy controls, results of third-party audits, and a significant milestone, ISO 27701 certification for DJI Flight Hub 2, bolstering the platform's credentials in privacy information management. A central theme in the white paper is DJI's belief that users should remain in control of their data. Whether you're a hobbyist flying a Mini 4 Pro or an enterprise operator using a Matrice 400, DJI builds privacy controls directly into its systems. For example, personal information provided during the account registration, like names and email addresses, is protected using AES 256 encryption. Enterprise users can also activate local data mode, which severs all internet connections from the drone app, ensuring data doesn't leave the device even by accident. Operators can fly and update their drones completely offline and set secure, non-decryptable passwords to access stored media. Consumer users in the US will also note a significant change. Since June 2024, DJI drones operated in the United States no longer have the option to sync their flight logs to DJI servers, reducing the potential for remote data access. So, I'm not going to dig into all of this. There's a lot of stuff here, but they are covering encryption. They cover independent audits and bug. They're instituting a bug bounty.
This to me is incredibly clever on DJI's part. If
Mhm.
you look at the various platforms that we use, much of the data that's data at rest or data in transit is not encrypted. And much of the data, and as you look through the 2024 FAA Reauthorization Act, where Congress has mandated network remote ID, our personal information will be across networks as well as effectively flight path and flight log data. So no data goes anywhere. It only becomes local, as well as the data that goes back and forth at C2 command and control data is encrypted. Props to DJI. This is very clever. And as they continue to argue that they do not pose a national security threat, this is just one more reason to say, wow, I guess they don't. Very clever on DJI's part.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of good stuff that DJI is doing. Great for people and their privacy and being able to use these DJI drones in a way that it's safer and better for them. But I also don't think the reason DJI is getting banned is any of these things. It's made up reasons. And so the people who are making these regulations aren't going to care
Right.
because you can't fix a problem that's
Is
imaginary.
ill-defined.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, but still very clever. And as you say, good work on DJI's part. And certainly, if we ban DJI in the United States, this will be put DJI further ahead in the rest of the world.
100%. So let's see what else I've got. Just in case anybody was worried about advanced air mobility, I know I'm terribly worried about it. Part of me just thinks it's silly.
You're afraid
but
you're going to hop in a drone and go get delivered somewhere?
Yeah, it's just
Especially if it's powered by an aerial screw.
I just don't see this like being a mass thing. I mean, helicopters. How long did it take for helicopters to take off, Dave? I mean, I don't know the history there, but I just feel like a bunch of quadcopters being aerial taxis everywhere just
Yeah,
doesn't
Igor
make a ton of
Igor
sense.
Sikorsky passed away. Oh, I want to say in the 80s, and so it was I think in the 1930s before they had prototypes and before they became anywhere near useful. If you think about the Bell helicopter that was used in the Korean War in the 50s, it was a
Mhm.
pretty awful aircraft. And today, if you think about the number of helicopters in the United States is 16,000. That's it. So there are 6 to 700,000 private pilots in the United States. There are several million drone pilots and 16,000 helicopters. So they are frighteningly dangerous, and they're still missing their loss of life targets every year. And so that's, the FAA works hard on this. The helicopter associations work hard on it. The training, the safety requirements of helicopters are all incredibly rigorous. They are really dangerous aircraft.
Yeah, and I mean, a small UAS, a small multi-rotor, not dangerous, to the normal person. Yeah, there's the chance of prop strikes. There's a chance of a fire with lipo, as we were talking earlier. You know, one falling on somebody, dangerous, right? But all in all, I mean, from a hobby grade perspective, but man, I can just imagine what one of those crashes, like a full size with people inside, like
Yeah,
that.
I
That
mean,
kind of makes my soul hurt a bit.
several months ago, we lost another helicopter in Manhattan. It was a touring helicopter, a family plus the pilot, and it looks
Mhm.
like likely result was what they term the Jesus pin, or the pin that secures the swash plate to the primary shaft for the main rotor. So
Yeah.
yeah,
To Dave's numbers there, he's not wrong. 5,463 helicopters in the military, and then 9,348 helicopters in the commercial world here in the United States. So just shy of 16,000. So anyway, the FAA and aviation authorities from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom developed a roadmap for advanced air mobility aircraft type certification. It aims to align the country's AAM airworthiness and certification standard by sharing data, research, and safety information. The authorities signed a declaration of intent committing to the roadmap principles. The roadmap principles will foster collaboration, promote technological innovation, and streamline the certification and validation process for new aircraft types across these countries, which are members of the National Aviation Authorities Network.
Maybe I have it wrong, but promoting technological innovation and type certification seem to be opposites to me, right? Like,
Crashing into one another, right? Collaboration on current AAM type certification will enhance this work. Traditional aircraft are type certified in the country of design using internationally accepted standards. When other countries then validate the aircraft against these standards before the aircraft can be operated there. However, differences in AAM certification standards are emerging across the world. This roadmap acknowledges these differences and provides a framework to harmonize standards to streamline validation and safe entry of AAM aircraft into multiple markets. This effort is safety-focused and innovation-driven and supports the industry's desire to manufacture aircraft that can meet the certification criteria of multiple countries. So, not going super into it, but
this was one of the areas
not flying in one of those.
this is one of the topics that was discussed in one of the executive orders, if you search on anything with respect to Amazon delivery, their biggest challenge was to get a type certified aircraft so that they could do deliveries.
Yeah.
Google Wing logged 400,000 delivery flights, not in the United States, but in Australia, where they could test the aircraft, because the struggle of getting the FAA to agree to a type certification. So this is effectively the whole spec and the engineering, the testing, the design, everything with respect to an aircraft, and it takes a frightfully long time to get a type cert for any aircraft from the FAA, and this has been a criticism of the FAA for decades. And so we'll see if the new FAA administrator is able to work on this. And certainly AAM type cert has been a focus for the last 5-6 years that I'm aware of. So we hope that this moves in the right direction, which is, as Dan says, try to make sure those are safety and innovation versus type certification. Hopefully they can work in concert and at speed. Remains to be seen. This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. This one's really cool looking, by the way.
Yeah.
But I really want it to be like bulletproof ceramic or like some kind of craziness, because if one of those propellers shears, like,
or how many motors do you have on there?
Right. Let's add 4 more.
Yeah, really. I like octocopters. I'm liking that.
Right. All right. So that's all I've got for tonight, guys. Dave, what you got for us?
I had one thing. So we've talked a lot about the beyond visual line of sight notice for public rulemaking. I ran into a colleague who is an officer in the trade association and the surveyors organizations across the United States. So surveying companies have been using drones for a number of years. They now get centimeter level of accuracies on their surveys. Drones have been a fantastic tool. Guess which brand they use hands down more than anything else? DJI. So They have a government affairs individual. We're reaching out to that individual to talk to them about the points that we're looking for on the BVLOS NPRM. So if you know someone who is working in any industry, that's inspection, it's ag spraying, it's something where they use drones and beyond visual line of sight might be of interest, send them our way if you would. We'll share what we've learned over working on this for a number of years, and we will encourage them to create comments as the NPRM comes out. And that's all I had, Josh.
All right, Dan, anything from your side?
Nothing from me, but there's a couple of YouTube comments.
Okay.
Meat was saying, will the slashes to the FAA affect getting these kinds of things done? And I assume they will, is what he's saying. I would
Yeah.
assume, yeah, less money, less personnel, less likely to be able to type certify aircraft and everything else.
Yeah, I just my own speculation. I would assert that there's going to be a cascade effect. Knowing what happens to large organizations when you cut material numbers out of key organizations, the entire organization is damaged. So the FAA is 45,000 people. The Doge cuts knocked out, they said 700 to 800, and then another 800 or so people who were responsible for the equipment to support air traffic control. We now have they also terminated all probationary employees, which knocked out hundreds of FAA employees. So if you transferred, you become a probationary employee. So that was a real knock. So at the FAA has a huge air traffic control problem. I guarantee that that's going to have a cascade effect across the entire 45,000 person organization. So yeah, I think this is the cuts and the calamities and the fear that is put in folks' heads. Well, we've got a different sheriff in town in terms of how getting rid of people is it will create problems in efficiency that will absolutely relate to AAM and small unmanned aerial systems. So I'm expecting that the beyond visual line of sight rules will be delayed, even though they're supposed to be delayed or they're supposed to be in effect. Was it 240 days after June 6th, I think? Yeah. I'm not holding my breath on that.
Dave, did you ever get a chance to watch the Last Week Tonight episode on air traffic control and from a little while ago?
I have not.
Still was yeah, if you want a decent background information on air traffic control and hiring and all the stuff that they have to deal with, yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah,
for anybody interested in that sort of thing.
It takes years to become an air traffic controller. It's it's a good job. It's not an easy job, and the pressures are significant.
Yeah, I think the episode also tried to go into the efforts to modernize it and what all the old equipment and floppy drives and stuff that they still use.
Can you imagine? Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, Dave would be at home, but the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I was, if you'll forgive the expression, peripherally involved. One of the workstations that was being considered for the for changing over the air traffic control monitors, that was in 1992. So it's been a while since there's been a major refresh of just the displays that the air traffic controllers use. So yeah, they are not working with state of the art.
Yeah. CBR Runner was also asking, can't the FAA open up some land for testing of these things, get testing and find the issues early? And isn't the FAA working on some areas where you're allowed to sort of break the rules and test things?
So I know, I mean, that would be the UAS test sites, right? And I believe they just moved into New Mexico for counter UAS testing.
So Alex is our Alex is involved in the, it's Beyond is the acronym of those test sites. University Alaska Fairbanks, where Alex is a grad student, is one of the sites. There's a site, it's, how many miles is it, in mid-state New York, so up near Syracuse. So absolutely, they're there. You have to bring your aircraft there, and you can get them tested, and it's absolutely the case. It's a zone of airspace where it's well marked on sectionals that beware, there are crazy drone operators here.
Or in this case, maybe crazy AAM,
AAM, right?
Right.
which would be even scarier than drone operators.
Yeah, well, one of the for a General Atomics Raptor was given approval to fly in the United States, and it used one of these Beyond locations, and it only cost $10 million, and this was 4 years ago, to be approved to be able to fly and get a type cert in the national airspace. So, but we know about Raptors. They've been flying for years. This doesn't make sense. Well, they don't fly in the United States national airspace. At least they didn't. Now it's legal for them to fly.
Well, that's insane.
Well, that's all I had.
All right, cool guys. Well, sorry for the short show tonight. Like I said, news has been kind of slow lately, and
news in UAS has been slow.
Yes. No, the other news has not been slow, but our news for this, it's a little dragging, but I think it's dragging behind because of all the things that are happening in other parts of the world right now. So,
absolutely.
As well as in our part of the world. So, but with that, guys, I'll give you back, looks like 14 minutes of your evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. And then we'll see you again in another couple weeks. Appreciate the feedback from the YouTube chat. That's always awesome. And we love answering your questions. So keep them coming next time, guys. And we'll do our best with that. And then also, as soon as we know anything on Beyond Visual Line of Sight, NPRMs, all that stuff, we will get that information out to you as always. So
absolutely.
Stick with us. We'll see you in another couple weeks. Thank you, guys.
Great.
Fly so high, I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.